Okay, well, hello everyone. Welcome back, or welcome for the first time. I'd like to welcome you for this conversation about the future of work with Stephen Brewster today. I think most of you have your cameras on, but if you want to turn your cameras on, it's always nice to see all the faces, so you can do that. And of course, mute your mics, please. So we have this series once a week for about 30 minutes. We talk about the future of work. This is something that's partially supported by the National Science Foundation, so we're grateful for that. And the organizers of this are myself and Orit, who are going to be working today on this, and then Linda Boyle, John Lee, Rafael Sadoun, and Manfred Chelgi as well. And this is a recorded session. And if you have any questions, and well, hopefully you have many questions, then please use the chat window. And I'll be asking some questions to start with, and then Orit will be the person who's looking at the questions and then moderating them and bringing them in.
And possibly calling on you to read your own question.
Very good. Thank you, Orit. So it's wonderful to have Stephen Brewster with us. He's professor at the University of Glasgow. He recently hosted us in Glasgow as for CHI 2019. So let's get started. So, oh yes, that's nice. So Steve, you've worked a lot on virtual reality. So how do you see the opportunities for the future of work through the prism of virtual reality?
Yeah, so we've been thinking about work in VR and AR over the last few years, and have a kind of ongoing project now helping us think about that for the future. So why are we thinking about that? Well, there are some advantages of working in VR. So, you know, I can create my multi-monitor office environment wherever I am. If I want to, I can create that on the bus. I could have a kind of massive monitor in front of me that I could never have normally on the bus, or in a small office I could have a big monitor just by putting on the headset. The cost of that, yeah, that's quite low. Monitors are expensive, but headsets are relatively cheap, so I can have a IMAX size screen in front of me if I wanted to through my VR headset, but I couldn't afford that nor fit that into my home office surrounding me right now. It gives us new kind of interaction possibilities. I can do different kinds of things in VR or AR because, you know, these are not real things, they're virtual things. And of course I can use that for collaboration. There was a CHI workshop yesterday on collaboration in VR, for example. So it opens up lots of interesting possibilities. So that's why I think it's a topic worth investigating to see where we can push that.
Yeah. And so do you think, you know, as we're thinking about this, we were just talking about the lockdown and everybody's at home. How do you think that translates, or does it translate well in, you know, right now, today?
Well, you know, you could of course say, yeah, it's extremely timely. Maybe we could do something more immersive than just seeing, you know, many thumbnails of each of us in a window on the screen. Perhaps we could be in something more of a shared environment, which might feel a little bit, anyway, more like being together in a real kind of space.
Yeah.
But you know, oh, go on, Andrew. Yes. What?
Go ahead. Well, actually, you know, my one experience with that is Mozilla Hubs. I don't know. Are there many others that are out there that could be tested out? Shared environments.
You know, Mozilla Hubs, yeah, I've tried that one as well. It has some interesting issues. I think many of those platforms are a kind of work in progress, but necessity is the mother of invention. So we have the necessity now. So maybe people will be working on new and better kinds of ones to enable us to do that. I guess we've been thinking of a few issues that would need to be dealt with in order to make good interactions and good user interfaces in those kinds of environments. But I'll talk about this. But one of our big foci has been on how you might work in physically located in different kinds of settings, or collaborate or play perhaps, but this talk is I guess around work. So our particular motivations have also been like motivated working in planes, working in a car, working on a bus. So trying to think of how you would use VR in those kinds of workplace settings. So there's those kind of physical constraints, as well as then the constraints of the platform that you might be using and the virtual environment you might be in. So we've been a little bit more thinking about some of the restrictions caused by those environments. You know, for example, if you're in a car or an economy plane seat, then you're in a small space, so you haven't got a large area in which to interact. Typically, if you're in VR anyway, access to peripherals such as keyboards and mice is difficult because you can't see them anymore. So we've been looking at how you might integrate those physical peripherals into the virtual world. You know, keyboards are great for high throughput interaction. We haven't beaten them really yet. So how do you bring those kind of things into the virtual world? Doing typical things in VR, you know, maybe using VR controllers. Yeah, well, you're not going to do these big movements, perhaps,
right.
if you're sat in an economy plane seat or your car, because the people nearby are not going to be very happy with you punching them. So what could you do to change those kind of interactions to make them work better? But even if you think about the physical workspace, you know, I could have 5 monitors surrounding me for no extra cost. I can just make virtual monitors. But then the question is, how do I interact with a monitor that's right behind me?
Sure.
You know, what's it going to do for my neck and my neck strain? So thinking about those kinds of issues is something that we've been really focused on.
So do you, you know, we're certainly interested in cars, and I know that there's that's one of your interest areas too. So do you think it's going to be passengers first who are going to end up using VR, or is it going to be sort of the automated vehicle and then I don my VR glasses, or is it going to be augmented reality? How do you see this moving forward?
So I think probably in the short term, the easiest will be for passengers, because you could do that right now. We had a paper at Kai a couple of years ago looking at passenger use of VR. In our project, we're kind of selling it as a way that people on autonomous vehicles could do things. So then it could potentially become the driver who doesn't have to drive for a while because the car's in autonomous mode. We're starting with VR because in the end, the quality of the VR headsets right now is better than the AR headsets. But our aim is eventually that this would move to AR. That would be the most flexible. You know, and if I could use a pair of these things, which were really AR glasses, and I could somehow switch in and out of different modes, then that would be the most flexible of all. But you know, we're quite far away from that. So our starting point has kind of been passengers wearing VR headsets, and then kind of learning what we can from that, and then we can expand out.
Got it. I see that the questions are starting to come in, so please keep that up. I did want to ask one more question before perhaps we'll move to audience questions. Is, you know, VR to me is visuals. I don't know, that's my first thought, right? But what else? So, you know, what else do you see as perhaps important to think about as we explore the VR aspects of the future of work?
You know, my research group is the multimodal interaction group. So we are really interested in all the different sensors and control capabilities that humans have. So we're definitely interested in that. If we had all gone to Hawaii, we presented our paper on augmented audio reality. So we've been looking at that as well. So that's that's not using a visual display at all, but just using audio. And there's a lot of interesting things you can do with audio augmented reality, augmenting your auditory world with sounds, with speech, with other things. So that, I think that's a really interesting topic, because you can do that right now. If you've come across those Bose sunglasses, which have got microphones in the arms. We've used those a lot. The quality of the sound is really good. You can create a really excellent audio augmented reality there for the cost of, well, £200 in the UK. I'm not sure what they cost in the US, but they're not expensive devices, way cheaper than a HoloLens 2 or any kind of VR headset. So they're really high quality. In terms of haptics, yeah, I'm very interested in how you can use a sense of touch. We have been a bit looking at how you might use ultrasound haptics in VR to allow you to touch things in space and then feel haptics on your hands. So you can then create interactions in VR without holding controllers that then you can get haptic feedback against your hand. Lots of these things I know are research projects going on across many different places because the addition of those extra senses really improves the interaction. So I think that's a really hot topic.
Nice. Or do you think we should?
Yes, I think we can. We have some questions from people here. So Nadia, would you like to come up and ask your question? A couple of questions are on VR, but I'd love to hear a little bit more if people have questions, or I will ask a question about other senses as well.
My question is, how accepting do you think people are of VR in the car? How do you think, are they willing to give up all the situational awareness that they have? Like, it's more important for the driver, but even for the passenger, how do you think people are willing to give that up?
Yes, that's a great question. Actually, one of the strands of the work we're doing now is on the social acceptability of wearing and using those headsets in vehicles. So we've done some work on planes. There was a paper at CHI last year on plane VR, looking at the acceptance of use of VR headsets in planes. You know, you can imagine in a plane, if you're deeply engrossed in your VR world and the plane is on fire and the person on the inside of you is saying, I'd like to get out, please, and you don't notice. So there are many issues for, again, for the future of driving. Maybe driving is going to change a bit. If you're in your car on your own and the car is fully autonomous, maybe that's just fine. If you're sharing a car with a family member, maybe that's okay. But if the car becomes more like a taxi or a pod that comes and picks you up and there might be other people in there, then it's socially a bit interesting. I'm sharing a space with somebody that I don't know, but maybe I can't see them because I'm wearing a headset, or they don't know what I'm doing. Or do I feel okay leaving my bag with all of my stuff in it next to me and I can't see what they're doing with it? You know, that would be the same issue if you were using the VR on the bus or the subway or something like that. So there are a lot of interesting social issues that come up there, and we're just starting to investigate those. Some of them go away with AR or with VR, where you've got more pass-through, which is maybe the same thing, because then I can see more about what's going on. So if I'm wearing an AR headset and I've just got a screen drawn on the back of the seat in front of me, and I can use that as a display and interaction surface, then maybe it's not too bad because I'm still able to see what's going on, and other people can see what I'm doing, so the situation isn't so unusual. But certainly there's things we'll need to think about, especially if we're really cut off in a full VR world. Yeah, will you remember when it's your bus stop to get off, or your train stop to get off? If you're immersed in your world, maybe you'll just forget and end up at the end of the line somewhere where you didn't want to be.
Yeah, and thank you. So thinking about VR, before I get to Chris' question, I just want to elaborate about social situations. So there is this tension with the real world, but you mentioned social spaces such as a car or such as an airplane. And I can imagine a scenario about, I would like to collaborate with a colleague on their way to CHI, sitting somewhere else on the airplane, but in the same space, or sitting in a car next to me, but not in my car. I would love to hear your thoughts about kind of collaboration with people that are in near spaces.
Yeah, that's a really good topic. I think an important one to talk about for things like VR, because oftentimes VR is seen as a kind of like, I'm cut off from the world, I'm on my own. The world is not collaborative, it's just me. But there's no reason it needs to be like that. And as I was at the workshop yesterday, we've been looking a little bit about how we can bring people who are remote together in a virtual space so that you can share experiences, which could be me in the back of a car, or you're on a train somewhere else and Andrew is on a plane somewhere else. Perhaps then we could all be together in a sharing a virtual space. So the technology to do that isn't super complex in many ways. At least to what we were doing is we were using the Microsoft Connect to cut each person out of their environment and then imported them into the other's environment, so I could see the other person in mine, they could see me in theirs. That meant that neither person was perfectly and seamlessly inserted, but the fact that they looked a little bit kind of ghostly actually worked okay, because then you could see that, well, they're not really there, but I can tell that they're there. We can kind of attend to things together. But then, you get all the issues of CSCW and sharing virtual. That stuff is all still going on, and all the great work from CSCW and still unsolved problems are still there to be investigated. And I don't think, with good VR, those problems are just the same, and the solutions are maybe the same. So I think it gives a lot of opportunities. But I don't think, so far, VR has been mostly single person, and I think that can easily change now.
Good. So you and I think that relates to Chris' question. So Chris, would you like to kind of jump in and ask a question?
Yep. I was surprised by some of your earlier examples where you said, oh, VR, let's use them for multiple screens or big screens in virtual reality around us, which not knowing a lot about the technology, but it sounds like one of the situations where VR might actually not work. So I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit on the state of the art, because typically one ways that I think multiple monitors work is that I can focus and look at a detail on my big screen, but I also have other monitors around me and I can see stuff in peripheral vision, but in VR, it's typically a bit more focused where I can look. So how good is VR for that type of peripheral vision use without that it gets really distracting, right? If there's an alert here, maybe I'll see it, but yeah.
So, I mean, I think there's currently a problem in that VR headsets don't give you a really wide field of view. So every generation, it gets better, but we're not yet fully, the full amount of peripheral vision I've got as a human. Certainly the earlier VR headsets were narrow, and things like HoloLens 1 was narrow. So I think in some ways the technology will improve, and that's a question of optics and other kinds of things, and I'm sure clever people are working on that to allow you to bring in more of your peripheral vision. So I hope that will be solved. That's not a problem I'm working on, because I'm not a hardware guy. Then you come down to the problems you're talking about, Chris. That sounds like user interface design. So I could design. Well, I've got two monitors in front of me right now. They could be designed in a way which is very interrupting and disturbing, or they can be designed in a way where the feedback is done well. There's no reason why that would be any different in a VR display. One of the problems that we were looking at was the fact that, yes, you could surround yourself with monitors all the way around. It doesn't cost you any more to have a 360-degree monitor wrapped around your head if you want. But then the problem is, well, there's stuff happening behind me here. How do I know about it? And I don't want to have to turn around all the time. So we were looking at, for example, how you could map head movements to rotations, extra rotation of the display. So I could easily look behind me. I could rotate the display around faster, say, than just my normal head movement. So I could allow access to that wider space. But you have to be very careful, because that could cause ergonomic problems, because of too much head movement is painful. And then, yes, if interesting things are happening behind me and I'm not looking at them, then that's bad. So those are important issues of kind of workspace management and display design that, well, you know, we've had those in HCI for a long time. Maybe that stuff had gone away a bit, but now it comes back when we have whatever display, however the layout can be, it's our imagination limits it, then we have to think about how the interaction works.
Right, and that might also be where these multimodal experiences then come in, right? Like the haptic or the sound, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so, you know, we and others have seen that with people watching, for example, shared 360 videos, is that, you know, if you're trying to share the space with somebody else, are they looking at the same thing as you? And these are, you know, classic problems from CSCW, but I could be looking at something interesting over here and you could be pointing the other direction and looking at something boring over there. You know, where in all that space is the interesting stuff happening? And how do you design it so that either we know where we're both focused, so we've got some kind of group awareness, or how do you bring the interesting stuff to my attention? There's lots of great issues there, and many people have looked at those issues in CSCW for a long time.
So one question I would like to ask is, you know, especially today as I look around my own environment and everybody else's, we're at home, all kinds of interruptions, and this issue of work and, you know, well-being, I think is ever more, you know, present in my mind. So how do you see VR playing that? How do we support well-being with VR?
So I guess there's good things and bad things. So let's start with the bad maybe. Well, okay, the VR headsets are currently heavy, they're hot to wear, they're going to give you strain on your neck, they're just uncomfortable for long periods of time. Your eye focus is not, you're not looking at things far away, you're looking at your eyes being tricked into thinking things are far away. So there are issues there which could mean that using it for longer periods of time is less good. Some of those go away again with AR, because you're looking more at the real environment as well. But some of those are hardware issues. I'm sure the next generation of VR headsets will be lighter, the optics gets better, so some of those things will be reduced. Maybe the focus issue might be there forever, because you're never going to be looking really at things far away. It's always going to be a trick. But in terms of the good, well, you know, if I'm trapped in a small car or an economy plane seat or a small home office, then I could change myself so that I'm sat out in the countryside. I could be by the sea. I could be in a beautiful space. So it gives you the opportunity to escape from confining surroundings. Maybe we're in those a lot right now, given the lockdowns in different countries. So would give you the possibility to escape some of that. So that may increase feelings of well-being, because I could be in nature. So I think there's good and bad things there.
Yeah, in these group meetings, it's usually Duncan Brumby who provides that, because he
Yes.
usually walks around nature, you know, the English countryside, and shows us some videos, but I'm not sure he's doing that today.
Not today. The weather is too bad today. It's all nasty inside.
So this is a tiny bit different, but I just have to ask you about the levitating particle displays. When you visited here, you were showing us some videos. So tell us a little bit about that. Maybe people don't know about it, but perhaps it's worth introducing.
Okay, so this is I mean, it's maybe peripherally about work, a little bit less directly about work than the VR project. But we've been looking at how you might use ultrasound and ultrasound haptics for levitation of small particles. And what that means is you can create a physical model of something in front of you in space by using physical pixels. The pixels we use are polystyrene beads that we get from Amazon packaging. So you can use those, you can create a physical object in front of you. So a nice thing about that, for work anyway, could be that you could visualize data, but you're not just looking at a picture of it, you're looking at a solid object, which can then easily be shared by other people, because or in your environment, because you know you've created a physical thing in front of you. So that works well for sharing from multiple angles. You can do interaction with it, so you can move the beads around. You can get haptic feedback from it. You can get audio feedback from it. So we're looking at that as a kind of a, you know, as a replacement maybe for wearing a VR headset and seeing a version of the physical model of something. Is there's no headset, it's just your eyes. You created the physical model out of these beads in front of you, and then you can change it as you want it, delete it, and it disappears and comes back again. So it's that radical atoms idea of Hiroshi Ishii's kind of brought to life with ultrasound and these small beads. So we can create quite high pixel displays with a lot of flexibility in movement position. I wish I could show a video because it makes much more sense if I can show a video.
In this case, it might come in handy. Shamsi, I see you have a question.
I'm scared to unmute because I think that my kids yelling in the background would. This is a great discussion, Stephen. One question that I had is that how do you maintain transitions between your VR world and your real physical world? And so, I mean, the analogy that I have is that, well, when I'm in my office and I can close the door and then my family knows that, okay, I'm having a meeting, the door is closed. But I also leave the door open and they know that they can come in and out. But in the VR world, how do I communicate my interruptibility to people around me?
Yeah, great questions. So we have thought a little bit about that in terms of, yeah, how do I communicate something about what I'm doing to the outside world as a VR wearer? How does somebody from the outside world communicate with me as a VR wearer? So, you know, our kind of scenario here was, well, you know, maybe you've been in VR for a while, you lift up your glasses and there's someone stood right next to you. You think, oh, what was I in there? So things we've looked at were providing outlines of other people in the environment so that they don't disturb the immersion in the VR scene too much, but you could see people moving around just by their shadows, you know, the kind of predator style disturbance of the visual image or something. So you could see them moving around so that you would then know if there was other people in your environment, and not everything that they're doing, but perhaps something that they were doing. So that gives you some kind of situational awareness about what's happening. In terms of other people seeing you, you know, we haven't done this, but other people have put displays facing outwards on the front of the VR headset, so that somebody can at least get a view of, well, you know, what is he doing? Oh, I can see he's moving around in this virtual world. So at least they could get an idea of your activity and what you're doing. But I think that, you know, that bridging between the real world and the virtual world is an interesting one. You know, in the VR of the 90s, you did your VR in a special room and you were the only person in it, and it cost, you know, $100,000 even to do it. So that wasn't an issue. But now you could be doing your VR on the bus, or even in the home. You want to know where the kids are, or you don't want to trip over the dog. So those things become really important. I think there hasn't been enough done yet on that transition between the two, and that's a really good topic.
I think in even regular digital environments, we haven't quite solved that interruptibility awareness problem. I mean, the blanket signals of busy or available don't work because they have different value for different meaning for different people, and depending on who is interrupting you, you might have different signals. So I think that it's going to be an interesting challenge.
Yeah, and then, you know, this is not just a VR problem. You think of people walking down their street with their face glued into their phone, and they stop in front of you, or they walk out into the road and cars have to hit their brakes. Even with the devices we've invented right now, those are problems. You know, that could be worse because of VR and AR, or we could think about solutions and make it better. So that's, you know, that's up to us to decide.
Absolutely. Thanks.
We have one more question, and two actually. So we're going to kind of give Andre a turn to ask a question, and then we will conclude the formal part, but everyone is invited to join us for an informal conversation. So Andre, would you like to join us and ask the question?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Stephen, my question is, what's your opinion about tracking a keyboard and a mouse, or maybe a touchpad, and in real time and represent them in VR to solve, at least for now, the issue of fast input and interaction in the VR environment. Because then you would mix actual physical hardware and give tactile physical feedback, and the user is already accustomed to use them, and we maybe complement with hand tracking. There are some downsides, but I would like to know your opinion on that.
Yeah, so we've actually done quite a bit of work on that. We've been working with Logitech on that as well. So I think bringing in those peripherals is really important. We cannot yet beat the keyboard for high throughput text entry. So if we're talking about work, then and well, office work anyway, the keyboard is the best we've got. Mouse pointing is, you know, it's up there with the best. So bringing those in is important. You can do, and many people for a long time have tried to do mid-air typing, and sometimes it works, but it's never as good as a physical keyboard. You lose all that tactile feedback. That's not to say that we won't get better at doing the mid-air typing, but keyboards are really great. Mice are really great touchpads. So what we've been doing is looking at different ways of bringing them in. And bringing them in ways that doesn't break immersion. So how do you remain immersed in your VR activity, but bring in, say, a keyboard? So we looked at different ways. For example, you may look down, and looking down might then bring in something of the real world, where your keyboard might be. We also looked at kind of using the hand as a flashlight, so that where you put your hand in the world, you could see objects. So if you put your hand near the keyboard, then the keyboard appears and layered on top of your virtual world, so that you can type, and then it goes away again if you move your hand off. Various different things like that. Logitech have produced a keyboard which can be tracked by lighthouse beacons, so you can bring that into VR very easily now. I think for not all types of interactions, but particularly focusing on office work type interactions, bringing in those really good physical peripherals that we have is a key thing. As yet, I can't do my office work typing in midair. That is not going to be a successful interaction yet.
Thank you.
Very good. Well, please join me in thanking Steve for this conversation. This was a lot of fun. So I'm going to click my little reaction button here and say clap, clap.
Thank you for inviting me, Andrew and Orid.
So yeah, this is our conversation for today. Next week, we're going to have Gregory Welch from the University of Central Florida, and he will also be talking about work and specifically tying this to nursing, which I think is going to be really interesting. And then, in fact, Regan, who I saw as well here, so Regan Mandrick will join us in 2 weeks to talk about gaming as well and how that ties in with well-being, I guess, right? So we have a great lineup of conversations already, so hope to see you next week and beyond. And I'm going to stop the recording now, and I'm hoping that some of you can join us for a little bit of a social conversation.
Thank you all.